with you tonight, Caryl.
Thank you, Maryann. And yes, it is being recorded. If you do not wish to have your picture show up, please turn your video off now. Okay. So then, let's get started. Here we go. Megan is going to be running the slides. She's loading them up here. Guest member closing the deal. All right. So the first question I have for everybody is, who's looking for new members in their club? Who's looking to augment their membership in their club? Yeah, most of us are. So the second question is, who has witnessed a guest walk out the door, never to be seen again? Anybody? It's happened to me. Hopefully, after the presentation tonight, you will learn some ways to avoid that outcome and instead convert a guest to a member. Let's get started. So, to start with, sometimes we are so focused on getting new members, we're frantic to get new members, that we forget that they're people. And I think that this is a mindset that we need to learn. Focus on the people, not on the paperwork. People have a reason to walk in the door of your club. They have a reason to be there. They're looking for something. And what we want to find out is, what is that something? So that we can address it, so that perhaps they will say, oh, this is the kind of place I want to be. The goal, of course, when a member comes, whether they walk in the door cold or whether you know they're coming because it comes through the Toastmasters International system, they want to feel safe. They want to feel heard. They want to feel welcomed. And we're going to show you some ways tonight to make that happen. And then they want to be invited. People love to be invited to join something because it seems to them that they're wanted, then that people want them to join up and be part of the community. So once people feel like they belong, generally they want to come back and they want to stay. So with that said, Megan, can we have the next slide?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about each of these different steps individually as we go through our training tonight, but we want you to think of this whole process as a process, and that one part of the process kind of flows into the next section. So it starts, of course, with the inquiry when someone contacts your club, and how we respond to that is really a pretty big deal. So 24-hour, response within 24 hours, I think is really critical, because we're making our first impression of our club by how we respond to their interest in us. And if they have to wait days or nobody gets back to them, it sets up an expectation that, oh, this isn't a very organized organization, or they're not really interested in me coming and visiting them. So we want to respond to them as quickly as possible. And then we want to prepare for them actually coming to the meeting. So we certainly chat with them once they've inquired. We have a call with them and try to find out, what are they interested in? Why are they interested in Toastmasters, and specifically what their goals might be? And this doesn't have to be a real in-depth conversation, but we want to find out kind of what they're looking for, and then prepare for them to visit our meeting. So we find out if they're coming to the next one, and then alert a buddy. We'll talk about details about who you'll talk to and how you'll prepare for them to come to the meeting. But you do want to do some preparation. So once you know that they're coming, prepare for them to actually show up. Then the meeting happens and we'll talk about what to do sort of during the meeting and and then how to ask them either to come back or to join, but what is the ask? And being really clear about what we have to offer, about what the dues are, all those kinds of things is again part of the orientation. Then the next section, number 4, we have onboarding, which is also what you call orientation, but it's the more formal process of onboarding, of inducting them into the club, maybe assigning them a mentor, having some sort of orientation process. And then retention is the 5th part, which is equally important because you want to make sure that once they get in, that they want to stay. And orientation in from the project I did is not just about what they learn in the first couple of months, but it's really about how you keep them growing in Toastmasters and how you take care of your members once they're in there. So again, we'll talk about each of these along the way, but we just want to sort of show you the flow of this process. All right, next slide, please.
Okay. So, as Maryann has said, first impressions matter. The first contact matters. Sometimes the first contact is before you even have met them. So, for example, most people, when they're looking for a Toastmasters club, are going to go to the website. And that is the first impression. Is the website up to date? Is it informative? Does it have the kind of information that a potential guest or a new person who's looking for a club would find interesting, would find welcoming? And I want to just at this moment toss it to Maryann because she designed a welcome video for her club. She put it together and it is lovely. Maryann, why don't you talk for a moment about your welcome video?
Thank you. It's at southcoast.toastmastersclubs.org if anybody wants to check it out. But it's been up there for a few years now. It would be better if I updated it, I'm sure. But a lot of people have, and it's just me on camera saying, "Hey, welcome." And if you want to, if you want to get more comfortable with public speaking or get better at in leadership in work and whatever, this is the place to come. And we've been around for 100 years, and it just goes on for a couple of minutes, and a number of people have said that they came to our meeting because of the video, because I seemed friendly and welcoming, and it's kind of funny because I sort of forget about it. And a few weeks ago, we had an open house, somebody came and he said, "Oh, I know you. You were on the video." And it was like, "Oh yeah." So you get to be famous too by putting your video up there. But it does seem to really help. And again, if it's welcoming and friendly.
Yes, indeed. So make sure that video or not, that your pictures are current. Nobody wants to see pictures from 5, 8 years ago. It just doesn't feel now. It doesn't feel current. So be sure that your activities are posted, that whatever activities you have are current, that certainly your meeting time, your meeting date, that's accurate, your meeting place is accurate. If it's online this week, make sure it says online. If it's in person, make sure it says that. Anything to help the guest find their way to your club.
And Caryl, if I can say, what I always do is right after a meeting, we meet every other week or twice a month. As soon as I come home from the meeting, I go online to the website and I change the homepage and the floater message to say the date and location of the next meeting. Because again, nothing more frustrating than going and hearing it, say, and the meeting is going to be some date in the past.
Absolutely right. All right. Responsiveness. Maryann has already mentioned this, but I'm going to reiterate. Always respond within 24 hours. Why is that? Because they're reaching out for a reason. They want to hear back from you because it builds trust immediately. So I would encourage you to do that responsibly. And when they reach out to you and you respond, what kinds of things should you say? Well, first, you might thank them for their interest in your club. You might share a little bit about who your club is, maybe a little bit about your culture. Is it a corporate club where everybody works in the same place, or is it a community club where they come from all walks of life? Who knows? But they're looking for something, and you want to share accurately what your club is about. You could ask about their goals. And then, of course, you want to invite them to the next meeting as our guest. Please come as our guest. We'd love to have you join us. Please arrive 10 minutes early so that we can greet you and meet you, etc. And finally, responding to them very quickly, asking about their goals. Now you have a bit of a conversation going on. You're trying to engage them further, learn as much as you can about them without quizzing them, but just ask an open-ended question and let them respond to you. And they'll feel like already that they're welcomed and included. And they're more apt to say, yes, I think I want to go and visit this club. Next slide.
We said at the very beginning on our cover slide that it's all our responsibility, and we really believe that it's a matter of teamwork converting guests to members. So although the vice president of membership might be the one who is originally speaking with the guest before the meeting and will also be greeting them once they get to the meeting, it's really the role of everyone, all of the Toastmasters, but especially all the officers, to be sure to be welcoming to anyone who comes to visit. Sometimes clubs can feel a little cliquey from, coming in from the outside as a new person, because we know each other, we love each other, we chat with each other. And if you're coming in for the first time, it can be a little intimidating just trying to break into all of that. So again, this is part of the preparation step, is to, when you know that someone is planning to come to a meeting, to email all the officers in your club the names of the guests who you're expecting. And if you have some particular information about them, let all the officers know so that they can be prepared to greet them when they come, just to be aware and to be aware, for example, when you're doing the agenda, to make sure that if you're aware that there are guests in the room, make especially sure that you're going to be explaining the roles as you go through the agenda. So just sending out that information to the officers ahead of time can help remind them to make sure that they look for and greet the guest when they do show up.
And I'm just going to reiterate something there. It always feels like it's the job of the VPM to do all of this, but it isn't. First of all, and it's not even only the officer's job, it's everyone's job to welcome people, to get to know them, and to take a sincere interest in what they're doing and why they're there. So do arrive early. As the VPM, as the officers, arrive early, greet everyone, including the guests, with a smile. First impressions matter. So you definitely want to focus on the comfort. Make sure that the guests are comfortable. The more comfortable they are in your surroundings, the easier it is going to be for them to say yes.
I also find that giving them a handout helps a lot. Sometimes it's just good because they have something in their hand, but it also is a way for us to say, there's value here at Toastmasters, and just by showing up, we're going to give you some information. Usually that would include, certainly you're going to give them the agenda for the meeting, but also if you have some Toastmasters brochures, or there's a bookmark you can get from Toastmasters that has some speaking tips. There's a form, a one pager that has reasons why it's good to join Toastmasters, the benefits of joining Toastmasters. So any sorts of things like that, I have for the two clubs I'm in. I have a handout, a one-page description of the club that I've created, and I actually put that in the new member orientation package that I give them later if they do join. But you can hand that out at a first meeting for people also. And then probably the most important thing to me is also to put the application form in the handouts, to just to give them a copy of the application form. It doesn't have to be any pressure that here, sign up right now. But if you give them the information, then they can look at that at their leisure during the meeting, and you're going to talk to them later about about what all that involves. But having the application form, sometimes people are just so ready to sign up, and during the meeting they'll start filling out the application form if they're inspired enough. Most of them probably won't, but have it available to them just in case.
And it's also a good practice to sit them next to somebody who is going to be engaging them in some kind of a conversation, at least before the meeting starts. It could be an officer. It could be anyone. It could be a chatty Cathy. It could be a friendly person. And I would encourage you to have them sit next to someone who's going to engage with them a little bit. What we do in my club, if the president is there, I always introduce them to the president. I introduce them to anybody who's standing next to me, and that frees me up to welcome the next guest or to do what I need to do. As long as the guest isn't by themselves and is engaged in conversation, there's always going to be somebody who's going to be interested in learning more about the guest, and that's our goal.
Yep. And make sure that you get their contact information. If you've spoken with them before, you may already have it, but having a guest book is a really convenient way to make sure that you maintain an ongoing list of the people who have come to visit. And I'll just mention in the chat, Linda Romani mentions that they have a protocol page in her club to familiarize visitors with what's going to happen during the meeting. So great idea.
It is a great idea. And when guests come, the whole idea is to engage them. So be sure that the presiding officer knows that there are guests in the room so that he or she can have the opportunity to ask the guest to stand and introduce themselves. Just what's your name? Where are you from? Tell us, how did you find us? Or where, why did you decide to come tonight? And then, of course, they will be invited to participate in table topics. It's a great idea if the table topics master knows where the guests are in the room and can invite them to participate by calling them out. The guest, of course, does not have to say yes. But in our meeting this week, the table topics master, we had 3 guests and 2 members, and his first 5 table topics questions were directed at these people, and they each got up and they did a fabulous job. And I'm not sure all of them would have raised their hand had the table topics master simply offered the opportunity. But he called them up and said, come on up and pick a number from 1 to 365. And he had a million different questions, and it all worked out beautifully. So it's a great opportunity to get them immediately engaged in the meeting itself. And then, of course, at the end of the meeting, before the meeting closes, the presiding officer wants to take that opportunity to ask each guest individually, please Tell us what you thought of the meeting. And you'll be surprised what you hear. Most of the time, it's going to be good, but you might get something like, I'm only here because, someone reached out to me right away. I emailed 5 clubs and you're the only one who responded. And I really like, how this meeting has gone tonight and I want to come back, or something like that. It's very good feedback when you get it raw and from the person in the moment.
Yeah, and you definitely want to pay attention to that because you're going to follow up with them. And so you want to remember specifically what they said with their feedback at the end, that, yeah, I think this would be helpful to me in my work, or, whatever they're saying. When you follow up with them, you want to mention that. And the whole goal here is to be welcoming, but not to be overwhelming. And I think that's sometimes a tricky balance because a lot of people, when they come, are very nervous. They're nervous about public speaking in general, but they're also nervous about, what's this meeting going to be like? And are they going to make me speak and all that kind of stuff? So we want to be friendly, and generally I find that the friendly we are, the more people who greet the visitors, the more we hear that at the feedback at the end, where people say, yeah, everybody's just so friendly here. I really feel welcomed. And that's usually a positive thing. But for some people who are more introverted and terrified because they're at Toastmasters, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So you just want to be careful not to overwhelm them too much either.
Next slide, Megan. The gentle ask and financial clarity. The key question is going to be what? Would you like to join us? Now, some people want to ask that right away. The better idea is to chat with them after the meeting and get a sense. As Maryann said, you have a bit of a sense from what they've already said publicly when the presiding officer has asked them. So you want to build on that, follow up a little bit more, and then ask, would you like to join us? Sometimes, as she has already said, people want to join right away. Usually they want to know, how much does it cost? Tell me, what is the curriculum like? And they've got questions. So you want to be clear about all of that and answer all of their questions in the moment. Or, as I like to do, I like to follow up with them the next day. Now, there's a risk there, and Maryann will go, because we have 2 different approaches. Maryann likes to bring her laptop and sign them up that night if they're wanting to do that. And it's a great idea. Most of the time, what I do is I follow up with them the next day. The risk is that they don't answer my email, but that doesn't usually happen to me. In fact, I don't know that it ever has. So it's a matter of choice. And sometimes you're just going to have to read the face, read the guest, try to understand what it is that they're really telling you. And if they say, yes, I want to sign up right away, and you've got that laptop, do it. And if they say, I want to learn a little bit more about it, I'll say, I'll follow up with you tomorrow and give you some information. And then please feel free to, ask me questions that will help you decide. Maryann?
Yeah. And I certainly agree with that approach, but I also, I tend to, I want to save myself the phone call the next day if I can. And I just, sometimes people are ready at the meeting. If you've given them the application form at the beginning, they've had a chance to look it over. Filling out the application form, the bottom part of the first page is always a little complicated because it's prorated and there are all these different fees that some clubs charge and some don't. And so going through that with them at the meeting, I think is just a lot easier to do. But also, just in the past year, I've started bringing a tablet with me. And it's made a big difference because some people, just last week at a meeting of South Coast Toastmasters, we had two visitors. They both seemed very interested, but one of them was like ready, so where do I sign? How do I do it? Do I pay you cash? Do I use a credit card? And it's like, well, since you asked, I just happen to have my tablet here, and I learned how to go in as an officer and to the membership management section, add a member, and I was able to type in her information because I had her fill out, you're supposed to actually have them fill out the application form, the physical form. And because then it asks, do you have that form on file? But so I was able to copy from that, and then she could enter her own credit card information without me seeing it to finish the transaction. And that way they can start getting the benefit of Toastmasters right away because probably within 24 hours, they're going to get information from Toastmasters International and be able to go in and start checking out pathways and checking out all the resources that are available. So I never used to do it, but I do find that having that ready, it's different than just taking the paper application form. Having the tablet really there or a laptop really has made a difference for some people. And again, a lot of people are not ready to do it right away, but if they are, it's a lot easier to just handle it right away and not have to, worry about them changing their mind afterwards. Not that we're trying to pressure people into doing something they don't want to do. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that when people are excited about joining, why not give them the opportunity as efficiently and quickly as we can? And yeah, Linda is making a comment. What about voting them in? Absolutely, that they do have to be voted in as well. But usually that happens at the next meeting before they're inducted officially into the club.
Next slide, Megan. All right. So once they become a member, once they say yes, I go in and add them to Toastmasters International, or the treasurer does, and the club website roster right away, because then they have access to our agenda. We use Free Toast Host. Most clubs do. And that way they have access right away to the agenda, and they can begin to think about or sign up for a role for the very next meeting.
Yes. And the next part is celebration. And so there is an induction ceremony that we're actually supposed to do with every new member. And this is where you vote people in. And so the vice president of membership is supposed to present that person, the potential new member, to the president and let the president know that yes, this person has paid their dues, and I recommend inducting them into the club. There's an official induction ceremony that you can find on Toastmasters International website that says, membership in Toastmasters is a privilege, and the way you can gain the benefits is by participating. And so, do you promise to follow the Toastmasters promise, basically? And they say yes, or else the whole thing falls apart. And then you ask the club, do you, the members of this Toastmasters club, promise to support this new member in their journey through Toastmasters, or however it's worded? And then everyone usually says yes. And then you can either give them a new member pin. That's what we do in our clubs, but it could be a certificate, or it could just be shaking hands with them. But usually if there's something you can give them to welcome them officially into the club. Usually a good idea. And you try to make it as much of a celebration as possible. In at South Coast Toastmasters, I've created a welcome slide. And so we have that up on the screen behind us that says, welcome Maria, congratulations. And so just something little like that makes a difference when that people really feel welcomed then. And it's a moment of both the new member committing themselves to participating and supporting everybody else in the club, and the whole club saying, yes, we do, when you ask, are you going to support this new person? So I think it's a wonderful way, really, to get people to feel like they belong and to acknowledge that this is a big step for people and that we are really welcoming them into a club. Now, I don't know if other people do the voting them in differently, but in the clubs I'm part of, that's how we do it, as part of that induction ceremony.
And once that happens, or even before, honestly, once a person becomes a member, email the entire membership and let them know to introduce the new member. And at the very least, it signals the sergeant at arms to make a new name tag so that the person has a name when they walk in the door, and people will recognize the name because they've gotten the email from you, the introduction of that new member. Again, it is about feeling like you belong to the group right from the get-go.
Yeah, when I was PR vice president, I used to do a monthly newsletter for the club, and I would then, with permission of the new member, I would also mention it in the newsletter. And I usually, you can see on the slide, that's the picture we usually take of the new member being welcomed by being pinned by the presiding officer. And, you can put that in the newsletter again if they have permission for that. But yeah, so however you notify the rest of your membership, it's a good idea to do it. And then the next step of it is orientation. And again, from my project a couple of years ago, I came up with this whole orientation package, which I have in a binder, and I have 10 different sections in the binder that I hand out to the new member when they're inducted. And so it has a welcome letter from the president, a schedule, some of the forms that they might be using, information about their icebreaker, some stuff about the websites and how to get on, a section about pathways, a glossary. And the highlights of that are available at this with this link here. And but I've found that that's been really helpful too, that since we started giving these out to people, that people actually bring them to meetings sometimes, that it's it's where they keep their Toastmaster stuff. And it's not something that you would necessarily read through the whole thing at once, but when they go back home and they have a question, they can just go in and look to the section that might tell them about that. And I know, we're trying to avoid cutting down trees and using paper. So you don't have to do it this way. I also have this on our website, and so that once they get into the website as a member, they can get it all electronically if they prefer it that way. But I find having this something physical to hand them, again, to me and to some of our new members, seems to be important, seems to help sort of cement that, oh, I'm officially a member of something now because I've got this manual. And there's a lot more to do with, than actually conducting an orientation with them. And maybe you meet usually it's the vice president of education who's responsible for orientation. So maybe they have a phone call with them or a Zoom call, or maybe they meet in person to sort of go through the manual and to go through, introducing them to the resources of Toastmasters. But but getting them started in a positive way like this is really important to getting them to stay as well. Because even though people sign up, doesn't mean they're going to stay. So you want to get them connected to other people as soon as possible and get them connected to the resources of Toastmasters.
Next slide, Megan. Member retention. So congratulations. You've got the new member all signed, sealed, and delivered. Everything has gone well, and you're not done. Because as Maryann just said, member retention is critical. Most of us have 6-month memberships. Sometimes they go a year, but most of the time the renewal dates are April 1st and October 1st. And we want to be sure that our new members feel so good about being part of our club that they stay. And the way to do that is to immediately engage them in something. So it might be a smaller meeting role, a word master, for example, or some other role where it's an easy 2 to 3 minutes and they get to sit down and they feel good about it. Whatever it is, get them going soon. You might even ask them, when would you like to do your icebreaker? 4 to 6 minutes. It's all about you. It's a subject you know really well. We can sign you up when you're ready. Or we can sign you up for the next meeting. How about that? Whatever it is that you decide to do, engagement is critical. Now, from time to time, people don't show up at Toastmasters. I'm not sure what the ratio is, but in our club, we have about 30 members and, 15 to 20 might show up each time. If these absences are consecutive or consistent, it's a good idea to reach out to see if everything is okay. Some people might have things going on that they really need support around, and we become a family. After time, these people in our club become our friends, because they are our colleagues. We care about each other. And so when there's something going on, we'd like to be there for you. So do follow up. Again, it's about making people feel comfortable in the club environment. We put phone tree down there because one club member that we talked to actually has established a phone tree inside his club. And whenever something happens, whether it's an absence or whether it's a reminder of an event or whatever it is, they have an established phone tree so that this person has this list to call and this person has this list to call, and that's how they communicate. It's working for them. You could try it. Sometimes a voice on the phone you'll get more reception than an email. These days, we get overwhelmed with emails. So another form of communication might serve your club and the people well. And then there is the events that we put together socially. We begin to develop these relationships, whether they're entirely personal or whether they're entirely social or whether there's a mix of professional, personal, and social mixed in. As we get to know each other, we find ways to connect that you might find out that somebody lives on the same street or is in the same town, or you used to work with them, or you used to work with their brother. It doesn't matter. These connections are what deepen relationships. And in the end, it's relationships that we're building inside of a Toastmasters club as we learn. And this is why people stay, which is our goal. Do you want to add anything to that, Maryann?
Well, just want to, I guess, check in with people about what they've learned tonight, and if you have any questions, I've been answering a couple of them in the chat. But also, if there are any things that you're going to try based on what you've heard this evening, and we can't see all of you. Oh, I can see most of you. So you can just unmute and
Do you want me to stop sharing?
I,
yeah,
I think you can. Yes,
yeah,
thanks, Megan.
thanks.
Okay, I have a question. This is Crystal.
Okay.
I have noticed both in Toastmasters and in a painting class that I was in before that sometimes when people join, they're very intimidated by people who are fairly advanced in what they're able to do skill wise.
Yes.
For example, recently I was at a Toastmasters meeting and someone gave a speech, and the woman turned to me and she said, "How long has she been in Toastmasters?" And I said, "3 years." And she said, "Oh, okay." As if she thought she needed to like already be at that level to join. Do you have any suggestions for addressing that issue?
Yeah, I think that that's a great point, Crystal. We just had that at one of my clubs as well just recently. And I think it's a very, very common response that people are, as we said, people are often very nervous when they come and maybe even overwhelmed. And so assuring them that, yeah, that's how we started too. And there are some people in my two clubs who have really good stories about that, and so sometimes I encourage them to talk about it. But sometimes I will talk about and this is, if I happen to be the Toastmaster or in a position to be answering that question, but that there are people who have become presidents of our clubs and now speak at conferences who, when they first came in, would stay in the bathroom until the meeting had started so they didn't have to talk to anybody. And now they're very successful. Or people whose knees literally would shake when they would get up in front of the group, and now they're out speaking. And some of it, some of them, it's actually they're speaking professionally now. But for a lot of us, it's just now we're a lot more comfortable. And so I think addressing that with people right from the start is a great idea, and assuming that that's going to be a question that people will have is a great idea, actually. And yeah, Linda is saying we often mention their years of experience when the speaker is introduced. So that's another strategy. But yeah, it's a really good point, Crystal. Bruce has his hand up too.
Yes, great information so far. This may be a small thing, but it's probably important to combine it with everything else you've mentioned. Whenever a member of a club goes up to do a role, could be a speaker, could be answering a table topic, you address certain people or groups in sequence. Usually start with Mr. or Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, comma, and guest or guests. So you're addressing the guests too.
Yeah,
It's a small thing, but it's just one more way of acknowledging them.
absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And yeah, I think people do, although sometimes we don't, sometimes we're not as formal, starting something with, fellow Toastmasters, but that's why it's so important, as Caryl was saying, that when you start the meeting to make sure that you introduce the guests or have them introduce themselves, because that way everybody who's going to speak in the meeting gets to notice also that there are guests in the room, right? So that they, depending on the size of your club, or someone else was commenting in the chat, what if you have people online and you're not sure if they're members or not? But the person, the Toastmaster or the presiding officer at the beginning, when they acknowledge all the guests and ask them to introduce themselves, that's a way to make sure, again, that everybody knows and can follow up that the way you're suggesting, Bruce, of saying, and I'll often address the guests specifically when I'm talking about, if I'm Toastmaster, for example, I'm very careful to explain what each of the roles are, or I ask the members who are doing those roles to explain, but I'll often specifically say the name of the guest. So, yeah, so Jonathan, I know that you may not have seen this before, but this is something we do in our club or in Toastmasters to introduce new, vocabulary to people. So I may say their names specifically and I always write the names down as soon as they're introducing themselves in the beginning so I don't forget, because I have terrible memory for that sort of thing. But I write them down and then I look down and say, okay, so these are the visitors today.
It's always a good sign when the visitor stays for a while, 10, 15 minutes after the meeting is over, rather than heading for the door and out
Right.
in the parking lot.
Yes, absolutely. And I always mention too, if we're doing a meeting on Zoom, that I'll stay on Zoom for, afterwards if they have any additional questions, or in the room as well. Sometimes you have to get out of rooms right away, and so you don't have the time to do that. But if you possibly can, absolutely you want to do that.
Mhm. And if the club some clubs have their own club business card with the name of the
Yes.
club, a location, website, phone number, and so forth.
Yes, I actually made up some business cards that have both of my clubs information on them, because when I go out and I'm doing networking or I'm meeting somebody, it has, my information on the front of it, but on the back it has the information about the two clubs I'm part of. It has the dates and times when they meet, and then the club website, so that, because nobody's going to remember if I just say, well, go to southcoast.toastmastersclubs.org. Nobody's going to remember that. But if they have it in person, then that can work.
They used to be in Marion, right? And now it's in
Yes.
Wareham or something.
We were in Marion, we've been in Buzzards Bay and Falmouth. Now we're in Sandwich and Wareham. So the second Thursday of the month, we're in Wareham, and the fourth Thursday of the month, we're in Sandwich.
Where are you going to be next year?
Yeah, hopefully we'll stay there for a while. And Crystal just mentioned in the chat that the sergeant at arms at her club always makes a temporary name tag for every guest, which I think is a great idea, especially if you have time in between, like at South Coast. No, at South Coast, we don't have, it's a lunchtime meeting, so we only have the 1 hour. We don't have a break in between. At Upper Cape, we have a break in between with some food. And so at that time, that's a time to make sure that you check in with the visitors. And so if they have a name tag, that makes it a lot easier.
Hello, my name is.
Hmm.
You know who invented name tags?
I don't.
Guy named Walt Disney.
Ah,
He
well, he was
wanted,
pretty successful, so I guess we can take a lesson from him.
I guess he wanted to remember all his employees, but there were too many to remember the name of, so he created name tags.
Brilliant invention.
Are there other people with questions? Does anybody else have any comments? Believe it or not, we do not have a survey for you to fill out tonight. It's very unusual for District 31 not to have a survey, but we do not. However, if you'd like, we'd love to hear what you thought about the presentation, and you can put your notes and your comments in the chat.
I just want to say,
Oh,
I
Lee.
think that you did a really good job. This is Lee Goodwin, Speak Up Cambridge and Advanced Access. I think you did a really good job of laying out a lot of fundamentals that people should be doing if they're not already. And all of this advice is just, it's terrific stuff. And I think that especially the concept that the relationship begins before the meeting and extends after the meeting is really important.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Thanks, Lee.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments? Thoughts? Feedback? What could we do better?
Ramesh?
One thing I observed, and some of the members not like when we ask for, they come and like sometimes we get 3 or 5 guests, right? They also kind of, hey, we are interested. It looks great. And then when we really approach them, they're like, oh yeah, I don't like, somebody wants every meeting in person. Somebody wants only online. Somebody wants, hybrid is good. So we balanced into hybrid approach, but we saw some members not joining because they want completely in person. So they think that the third in person doesn't make sense, kind of. Is there any, like, did you have experienced that, and is there anything that you have a suggestion?
I can approach that question. I think the most important thing for anyone to become a Toastmaster is to have it work for them. So there are clubs that are all online. There are clubs that are only in person, and there are hybrid clubs. And I think that a person needs to find the club that suits their needs. That would be my best answer.
Yeah, and I belong to 2 different, sorry, go ahead, Ramesh.
Go ahead.
I belong to 2 different clubs, and they're both hybrid, which I kind of hate. I think it's really hard doing a hybrid meeting, but because you're not completely in either place. But because of COVID and what happened where we all went online for a while, we got some people who then weren't able to come back in person. And so it took us a while to figure, and that's why like South Coast has 2 different locations now, because we wanted all our meetings to be in person as well as online. And we couldn't, the Sandwich Library, we could only get for 1 meeting a month. So we had to go someplace else for the second meeting. So it's, you try to be as flexible as you can. But as Carol's saying, different clubs have different ways of being and different cultures too. I mean, we all do the same process, but like I've been to Crystal's club, Outermost Toast. It's a very different culture from, the culture of Upper Cape Toastmasters. There's some clubs that are much more corporate, that are actually corporate, but some are just feel that way more. So I agree with Carol that, helping people find the right club for them is really important, but also being as flexible as you decide works for your club can help too. So that's why we struggled a lot to get, the 2 in-person meetings every month, but we're keeping the hybrid part, the online part, because we don't want to lose the members who can only do it that way, or who some of the time at least can only do it that way. Mike, I'll take your question, and then we need to wrap up. But Mike Riley.
Thanks, Maryann. Great job. I appreciate it. I just was looking for some feedback because our club, well, when I say our club, Maryann and I are part of Upper Cape Toastmasters. There's a little bit of pressure right now to evacuate the building, and we only have like maybe 5 to 8 minutes after a meeting ends to try to get in contact or try to continue the dialogue with somebody. And I was wondering if anybody has suggestions on, do you have like an off-site place that you can all go to after the meeting for like coffee or sit down? Or what do you do if you're getting pressure from the building guy to say, get out of here? How do you guys handle it? Because it's kind of rude in a way.
Yeah. And of course, the one thing that we've done so far is that we just changed our meeting time
Right.
15 minutes earlier so that we don't have as much pressure at the end. Although the first time we did that, I think we still ended up going till 8:30 because,
I know, but I don't think we want to get the establishment upset with us and then they say you can't do this anymore.
yeah.
But I just didn't know if anybody had like an off-site place you go to right after the meeting. It's like, oh, we're all going to get together over at Quincy's or this or that. Has anybody ever tried that? Yeah, Lee.
Lee?
I think that if that were my situation, we haven't had that problem ever. But if it was my situation, I would address that at the beginning of the meeting and let people know, especially with guests. I think that most guests, not all, but most guests would be kind of reluctant to join something because I think they would feel kind of like an outsider unless you're specifically inviting them. But I would just bring that up ahead, let people know we'd love to talk to you more afterwards. And I wouldn't even frame it in terms of membership, but just, if you want to
Right.
talk about speaking challenges that you have at work or personal development, this is time for us to just talk about that stuff. People hate to be pressured, but as
Right.
Maryann
And
mentioned,
our club's kind of had an explosion in growth lately. I mean, all of a sudden we show up and we don't have enough seats. We got to pull chairs out and people are sitting around the edges. So it's like they want to engage. You can see it happening. You can see that people want to mingle. And then it's like you got to say, stop talking. We got to get out of here.
well,
That feels
I
like
don't.
it's
I mean, finding a meeting place when you're growing is a huge challenge in some places.
okay.
It was, when my club was 8 people, it was really easy. We're at the little front office of a bank, like the little
Right.
meeting room, bordering on the street. But we got to 12 or 14, then the challenge began.
Right. I think, Marianne, I think we had what, 17 people at the last meeting?
So,
I think, so that's pretty good. I mean, it's great to have that kind of enthusiasm in the club.
yeah, it's an enviable challenge, but still a challenge to
Yeah.
find a good meeting place
All
to
right. Well,
accommodate people
thank,
size wise and time wise.
thanks for letting me ask around. I appreciate it.
Before we take Sean's question, I just want to go back to Crystal, was it? Who was it? Maybe it was, no, I can't remember who it was. Anyway, I know it was Ramesh. If you can't find a club that meets your needs and there's just nothing doable, my suggestion would be to build a new club. It would be to find the people that have the needs like yours, and we can build a new club, whether it's a community club or a corporate club. It's likely a community club. But that would be my suggestion. And I have an example. Minuteman Toastmasters just celebrated its 50th anniversary 2 weeks ago. And it was started by a man who couldn't find a Toastmasters club that suited him. So he started it. And you know what? That man was at the 50th celebration. It was phenomenal.
Wow.
So, yep, it was terrific. He came in his wheelchair. He had someone push him there and he spoke, and he was so delighted to be there 50 years later. So it's possible. We'll just build a new club to suit the needs of the people who want to do it a certain way.
Members, if they are leaving because of this reason, established every 3 months we survey, hey, which one you want, so that we can at least understand where they are at that point, so that we can either readjust or do something, whatever we can. But the survey kind of helps, but it is not a complete solution. Thank you.
Oh, Sean, you're welcome. Sean De Silva?
Yeah, I just wanted to say great job tonight. Thank you, Caryl and Maryann. And also just to address Michael's question, one thing there's two suggestions I would make. One is if your agenda will allow for it, you could also set up for a break in the middle of the meeting. I've seen that be very effective with some clubs, especially ones that are trying to grow and maybe their agenda is not as full every meeting. So having that break kind of spreads things out, but also gives you some extra time to engage in those guests, not wait until the very end of the meeting but to get them sort of halfway through the meeting, like, hey, how are you enjoying the meeting so far? We've still got, more to come, but we'd like to get some input. And then that gets them a little bit engaged. I've also seen clubs who sometimes will, if they know they have a bunch of guests coming beforehand, will do like a pre-meeting event and go. We used to do it at one of my clubs where we would go to Applebee's for dinner ahead of time, and we sit down, some guests would show up, and they could get to talk to members even before they came to the meeting, and then they would join us to the meeting. So it sort of got them into getting to know people without having to walk into a meeting where it's like, oh, I don't know anybody here. That is another suggestion. But I also like the idea, and I've seen clubs do it, of if you have to rush out, let guests know beforehand, maybe even before the meeting. Like, hey, afterwards, some of the members, we go to this location to just talk. And if you have any questions, you could always join us. And, that letting them know beforehand also takes the pressure off them at the meeting to feel like they're not prepared to come. So preparation, I think, is the key. I think any of those ways could work. It's just what best fits your club.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any other comments, feedback? Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Maryann. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you've learned something that you can take back to your club and employ right away. And till next time, have a great night.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.